Planning for a new year or even the next quarter is sometimes a huge task. Okay, all the time for most of us. And I don't think many of us really look forward to the planning of the next quarter. And a lot of us don't know what's involved. We don't know what's involved in setting our businesses up to succeed and taking those dreams and those visions and all the stuff that's on your vision board or what might be on your planning. How do we implement that and put that into next year and turn those visions and dreams into priorities? Setting SMART goals and keeping score are a must, as well as fitting all the rocks in the jar. We're going to talk about those things because our guest expert today is a certified project manager for not only solopreneurs, but massive corporations as well. And she's going to take us through this project and why it shouldn't be so scary and overwhelming. Wherever you're watching from, one, we appreciate you. We are not a show without our audience. If by chance there's a link above you in the feed, go ahead and click that. Come on over here to the Erin Strayer Show platform. We'll be able to see you and see your comments here. We are on multiple platforms. If you're by chance watching the replay, hashtag replay and let us know that too. And again, you are live with us right here on the Erin Strayer Show, where we are all about promoting, cultivating, and expanding amazing female entrepreneurs that are out in the world doing things just a little bit differently. We talk about hot topics like planning next year and the next quarter. Those are pain points to things that we deal with and think about and know we should be doing. The incredible thing about us here on the Strayer Show is that we give you workarounds, tools, and tips to changing those hot topics and pain points into massive opportunities. And we give you things to work around those challenges that we face every single day. I'm your host, Erin Strayer, and recovering corporates and entrepreneurs hire me to get them business beyond the basics because most are indecisive. They're held hostage by their own fear and have settled for average. So I help keep them on track by setting attainable goals, plugging gaping holes in their businesses and personal lives, and taking their dreams to reality. And bottom line, I provide peak performance scaling strategies for growth-minded entrepreneurs so that you and your business gets the attention to detail it deserves and you start making money on your business. You can find me at erinstrayer.com. This show is never about me. It's always all about our guests. And today, this is no exception. Our guest today, formerly working for Fortune 500 companies and growth stage startups. Her massive portfolio consists of using business development, communication, and project management. Launching her own boutique business development and project management consulting practice, she now helps companies of all sizes grow using business development and project management tools and tactics. Currently, she is enrolled in Cornell University's Women Entrepreneurship Program and is consistently giving back through her work with the community by bringing joy to those who need it through therapy dog visits with her comfort caring canines. She's amazing. You're going to love her and her energy. Please welcome Marissa Taffer. Hi, girl.
Hi.
Hi, friends.
Here.
It's so fun. And I'm so excited to, we're getting close to the end of Q4 of 2019.
I know it's just crazy to me how fast that happens.
It's coming up so quick. And I know that so many people go, oh crap, it's December.
Yeah.
Q4 is almost over. I don't have a plan. I know what I want to do next year. I want to be profitable. And I know that that's a whole lot about what you do, but I want to go back for just a hot second and give the people a little background on you. So fill in a little bit of the gap, and then we're going to hit the ground running here for some of your smart tips.
Great. Yeah. So, Erin, I think you gave a really good introduction. I started my career. I've been in the Philadelphia market for almost my entire career. Starting in hospitality, I worked with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, helping to promote the city as a place to have meetings, do business, bring folks. Started there, was recruited by Aramark, which is a global Fortune 500, for a role in their global sales team that they were just standing up. So they'd hired probably one of the first ever chief growth officers, which is a role you hear more and more now. And
Yeah.
he was standing up a team, and he kind of said, what do I want to focus on? How in this business structure where we've got all these different business units and countries and people doing different things, what can I, sitting at the corporate side, do to move the needle on growth? How can I jump in and help the most? And what's going to come in and add the most value, instead of just coming in and going sell, 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 close, 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 numbers, 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 which, yes, that's all very, very important. And we got there, but his mantra was really around value, not oversight. So how can I come in and be a help to my colleagues so that we can then go after these big, intense numbers? So being part of that team actually really, really shaped a lot of, how I think about business, and getting to spend time with these incredible business leaders that sold all different products and services. My chief growth officer, Jeff Connor, actually just did a podcast with Gartner. I was listening to it last night, actually, as I was getting ready for this interview. And just, reflecting on that time in my career was just really powerful, and really reminded me a lot about why and how I do what I do. But, all good things come to an end. That team has since disbanded. Everybody's doing some really incredible things, across the country. He has since retired, and apparently is very much enjoying retirement. And I decided that after being at a really big company, I wanted to try something different. So I pivoted into what you'd mentioned as a growth stage startup. So they'd been around for a little bit. We're starting to find their footing. We're expanding and ready to hit the ground running from a sales perspective. So I spent about a year with them, and then spent another almost year working as a project manager in a digital marketing agency.
Cool.
And I transitioned out of that, and I'm going, I don't know what I want to do next. We're talking about SMART goals. I knew I needed to, make a living. I knew I needed to support myself. Having worked in startups and having a really flexible schedule and not having to go in and punch a clock, like, I'd really gotten used to that. So I'm going, oh my goodness, where am I going to find all of these things, and how am I going to do this? And through an executive coach that I had been working with for a while, she'd been a mentor to me. I'd helped her a little bit with some of her business stuff in between. And she kept saying, you should go do your own thing. And I'm going, I can't do my own thing. Are you crazy? Go on my own? How am I going to get health insurance? I'm like panicking now. Like, I remember just being like, oh my God, like, how? There's no way, like, no. And she just kept saying, I really think you should do it. I really think you should do it. She brought me my first client and said, this woman really needs who you are and what you do, and I think you should try it. And I went, okay, well, it's one client. Let's see how this goes. Okay. So we were, off and running, and within about a week, client 2 signed on. And from there, it just kind of kept going and going and going, and things filled up really quickly. And I finally went, okay, she is right. This is viable, and I'm going to do the thing. So I guess it was probably about this time last year, I literally pulled out a piece of paper and sketched out like a very primitive scorecard. I wrote down, how much money I wanted to make. I set some numbers. I set some goals for myself as far as, certifications I wanted to get, skills I wanted to learn, things I wanted to do, speaking opportunities. I thought, maybe I'd like to do a little bit more talking and speaking. Sorry about that. My dog has decided he needs to do some talking and speaking as well. Okay. So, it just started working, and things started to come together. And I really think that having taken that time to sketch it out on paper helped bring me a lot closer to what I wanted. I didn't hit the revenue goal I wanted this year. I still, looking at that, it's okay to be disappointed about that, but I also have to look at that number in context of everything else I've done. It's almost $20,000 more than I made last year, working for somebody else. So, even when you don't hit the big things, starting to think about what that data means is also really important.
Okay. So I want to stop you for a second, because I got to write that down because that was a big one. I want to point something out here. There were massive things that you did. You sketched it out. You put your goals on paper.
Yeah.
You did projections of what you wanted to make. Even though you fell short of your projection, you said it was even $20,000 more than you made when you were working with a company.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah. I was realizing, I'm like, this is actually really exciting. Even though it wasn't the big thing, it was still so many other things. And just one thing I want to point out about that is, I was really excited about some of those milestones. Maybe things like hitting 6 figures for the first time was really exciting for me. And then I saw, somewhere else in a women's group, somebody promoting a webinar where she had done almost double what I did in her first year. And then I was like, oh, maybe I didn't do so good. And then I went, wait a minute. No, like you two do different things. You're in different markets. If you sit around and compare yourself to everybody, like you're just going to be miserable. So stop it. Go have a glass of champagne and
like celebrate what you have done. Yeah. And that's a huge point also is compare-itis, right? Like, and we're kind of getting a little off track here, but I'm going to bring it back. But I think we all do that. I think we all sit there and compare ourselves to other people. And what you did was you brought yourself back and you're like, wait, we're in different lanes.
Yeah.
We do different things. And I want to pull back to massive kudos and bringing yourself back to identifying what really went well and what worked out of that and applying your project management skill set to your own business. And then what you do for other people is the same thing. And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with all of these different pieces, right? Like, and you have a scenario about the rocks in the jar.
Yeah.
Let's take that for a second. And so all the pieces, all the moving pieces, they can still fit in the jar.
Right. So just to back up for everybody so you guys know what Erin's talking about, as we were talking about this talk, one of the things that I had referenced is the story that I'm sure you can find. It's just on the internet about this college professor or somebody, and he holds up a jar in class and puts a couple of big rocks in it and says to the class, hey guys, is the jar full? And they all went, yeah, the jar's full. So then he picks up some little stones and puts the little stones in around the jar or around the rocks in the jar. Holds it up again and says, hey guys, is the jar full now? And they were like, yeah, like what's going on here? The jar's full. So then he picks up some sand and pours the sand into the jar, and the sand settles around the big rocks and the little rocks. Holds up the jar again and goes, is the jar full now, guys? And they're like, what is this dude doing? Like, yes, the jar is full. Then he pours in some water, and the water fills in around all of this, and so forth and so on. And the point is, like, you can keep stuffing all this stuff in the jar. There's a lot of things that fit in the jar. And the point of the story was kind of to extrapolate to our lives. Like, we all talk about how busy we are, how many things we have to do. But the reality is, there's 24 hours in a day, which is your jar. And how you fill that jar and how much you fill that jar is really under your control. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, just to set the tone of what we're talking about is, if you think about your, we're going to dive into scorecarding, but if you think about your scorecard, it's that jar. You have it, we're looking at 2020. You have a full year to get from where you are now to wherever it is that you want to be in a year.
A whole year, people.
and then it blinks and like we're sitting in December now and I'm like, what happened?
What happened? Right. So like, I know I'm super excited to share your scorecard method and what that looks like and lay that out. So break that apart with the correlation with the scorecard.
Yeah. So think about, just like we did, we had the big rocks, we've got the little rocks, you've got the sand, you've got the water. Right. So think about, your year. The way I encourage people to do this, and I don't want you guys to do this now, but later, what you're going to do first is, how I always start is I take a piece of blank paper and I'm going to think about 2019. So start with like, how did it go? Right now, and again, to Erin's point about being overwhelming, we're going to start small. So take 3 or 5 things that you did this year that like just went really well. You're really proud of. They're those things that when you see somebody walking down the street, maybe a former classmate, somebody from high school, if you go home for a holiday, and they say, "Hey, how are you?" Like, what are those couple of things that you want to tell them that you're really proud of that's going to make them think, highly of you? And it could be personal, it can be professional, it could be something about your family. So you start there. Then think about 3 to 5 things that, if you're having the same conversation, you're like, I would never tell anybody that. It put a gun to my head, or maybe not that dramatic, but just 3 or 5 things that like you're not super happy about. They didn't go as well as you'd hoped. It could be something like missing, a revenue goal by a couple $1,000s wasn't so great, or maybe you wish you had stood up for yourself more in a negotiation, or you took a job offer that maybe in hindsight, if you had known a couple things, you might not, whatever those things are for you. And it's going to be totally personal to you. Just some examples to get you thinking about what it could be. But 3 to 5 things that didn't go as well. So now, you've got these 2 buckets of things you maybe want more of and things you maybe want less of, if you want to think about it that way.
Yep.
So then what I do is I think about where I want to be at the end of 2020. So this is the part that's going to feel a little bit overwhelming, and it should be a little bit uncomfortable. You want to be uncomfortable. You want to challenge yourself. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a piece of paper and you're going to make a grid. You want 6 columns in your grid. The first column is going to be, so the first column is going to be your focus areas. So what are the areas that we're going to focus on for the purpose of this scorecard? This is like the big rocks. This is what's going to keep us on track. So if you want to get somewhere, these are kind of the roads you're going to take. Then you're going to have a column for every quarter, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the last column, which is actually the one we're going to fill in first, is going to be your year end. And I apologize, I don't have a visual for this, but
that's okay.
Start at the end. So, we're talking about these focus areas. A couple that, I've used and that I guide people to use really are your business and your career. I know we have a lot of business owners in this audience, people who are thinking about starting a business. So I say business or career. Your business can be your career. You could be working for somebody else and, growing a career or thinking about a business. But that's a big area that you want to think about. The other ones that I use that are important to me, one, especially being on my own, is professional development. So what skills do I either want to learn or grow this year? Erin, as you mentioned, I'm taking 2 classes right now, which is probably a little much, but I'm enjoying them both so much that like it doesn't matter. One is the Cornell Women's Entrepreneurship. And then after I'd signed up for that and started, I was graciously invited to a strengths-based project management course.
Ooh, cool.
So up my alley that like I would have, run through walls to be able to be part of that.
Yeah.
So for me, that's a really big part of like when I scorecard is thinking about the skills that I want to build for the next year.
Yeah.
The next one is.
So can I stop you for a second? So somebody that might be starting out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brand new, starting their entrepreneurship, in this final column, when they're goal setting, in that final column for personal things, like for me, personal development's an always. Like that's on my list all the time. Constantly taking classes. But for somebody that's new, do you have things that you recommend for them? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Take community college classes if you really want to learn Excel and that's not in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, so one of the coursework that I did last year, again, was very different than this year. So in my first year of business, here in Philadelphia, we have this great group called Philly Startup Leaders, and they ran a course called Founders 101.
Oh, cool.
So because I've worked in sales and marketing, a lot of what they were teaching was not like new news to me. But if you're starting an entrepreneurial journey and you've never sold or marketed and now you have to go find customers, that's not in your wheelhouse, I would highly recommend something, like that, whether it's something in your city, something you find online.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about that is now I had a cohort. So I had 50 people with me who were in very similar places. Like we all still stay in touch. It's fantastic.
Isn't that cool?
So that was
Support group.
something, yeah, exactly. Founder therapy.
Right?
That was something that I would do in my first year, like in a heartbeat over again. I still attend their conferences.
It's like way more than just networking.
Yes. And and to your point, like even if professional development means finding other entrepreneurs to hang out with, like that just might be the thing for professional development, is joining an entrepreneurs group in the first year. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to get certified in 50 things. I'm going to, like you said, maybe that's just part of our DNA, is taking classes and learning. For somebody who's starting an entrepreneurial journey and is already like overwhelmed as anything, it might not be the right place. So finding a group like what I had there, I took an online course from a leader that I just really admired, and he ran a business 101, and it just takes you through, even starting with like, do you have a mission statement? Can you articulate your mission statement? What are your core values?
Sure.
So just having a very systematic way of having, and again, coaches need coaches, project managers need somebody to come in and just have that outside. Not only was it a different perspective, but it was somebody guiding me through that process and reminding me all the things. So was it anything earth shattering that maybe I didn't, at least at the surface, like, know I should do? No, but now I've paid this money and set aside this time and had this person who's like checking in on me to make sure that I'm actually doing it.
Yeah. Right. So you had some accountability.
Right.
So I know that a lot of people are probably going to tap your resource for, insight on the scorecard. Do you have a way that you walk them through that? Like, is that part of what you do?
I do on occasion, especially, this time of year, I'm doing a lot of it with my clients, is going through really, how do we even do this? So really, like I said, we kind of start at the beginning. We start listing out all these things and these big areas we want to focus on. This practice for me came out of that period when I was in global sales. There's a million things that like a corporate center of excellence can do for the business units. Every single leader has a different point of view about what the priority should be. So what we did, instead of like, because that gets noisy, right? Like even if it's, your client, your boss, everybody's coming at you with these things that they want you to do for the year. Maybe a partner, a spouse, somebody, everybody, it gets noisy and you're like, I'm running around with like a chicken with my head cut off. I don't know how I want to, move this forward, make sure that things are getting done. Like I could work 20 hours straight and still feel like I've accomplished nothing if I don't know what I should be working on.
Yeah.
So what we did in global sales is we would basically create the scorecard and send it all the way up to the CEO and out to all of our business partners and say, this is what we're measuring ourselves against this year. These are the numbers we have to hit. These are the initiatives that we're going to use to enable those numbers. And this is how we're going to support you. If you have other ideas, great. Tell us. We might have to wait till next year. They may go on the scorecard next time.
Sure.
There's a reason to pivot. Like now, we have to have these conversations and it has to be a really compelling reason, because now it's got to go all the way back up to the top.
To the top.
To make sure that we're really on the right track and we're not just doing things because, shiny object syndrome, somebody had an idea, somebody wants something, that's all important. But at the end of the day, the scorecard is really about a roadmap. If you need to take a detour, that's cool, but like it should be deliberate. It should be something that you're thinking about in context of everything and not just because there was a good idea or something's in front of you.
I love that. So, like this just lights me up, talking about metrics, making sure you have checks and balances, all of the conversations like that to me, like, I'm like, let's keep talking. I have always said that if you can't measure it, you can't improve on it. So like, you know what I mean? Did you start with something on paper? Did you plan it out? Did you go, okay, I want to get here by the end of next year? How far did I get? Did I get off of the starting line? Awesome. I made progress, right? And you can go and you can tweak and you can work on that. But you have to have some way of monitoring that you actually started, which I think is your scorecard, right? Like actually having that process where you sit down and you plan and you go, okay, this is what I really did last year, and I want to continue that this year. This is what I fell short on last year, and I'm never doing that again. So let's make sure that's not on there.
Exactly.
Right. And like, I know that a lot of what you do and you talk about and what we've talked about before is this the same as the SMART goals that you talk about, or is this different?
It's so SMART goals are kind of the way you do your scorecard. So it's exactly what you were just saying about planning it out. So for example, if your revenue goal for the year is $100,000, that's a SMART goal, $100,000 in a year. It's specific.
Yeah.
Not I want to be profitable. It's very specific. It's measurable. Either you make $1,000, $100,000, or you don't. It's time bound. You've got a year. Is it realistic? It depends on, where you are. But, if you plan it out, even if you are starting your business on January 1st, there's nothing to say it's impossible. What you would do for that as far as how you make that a SMART goal is, you've got to be at the end of the year. We talked about that sixth column of year end, you put 100,000. So maybe you divide it by 4. And that's what you need to bring in every quarter is your 4 quarters. So 25,000 a quarter. If you get to the end of the first quarter and you're like, okay, well, I only made 15,000. Maybe you take that extra 10,000 and you spread it out over the rest of the year. Like it still becomes possible. You just kind of have to look at it, and now you're tracking towards it. You're able to make decisions about negotiating contracts, how many clients you take on, how many, if you're selling something, how many sales do you have to make?
Mm-hmm.
You now have all of this data, and it doesn't sound as scary, right? Because you went, okay, well, this is what I have to do in a quarter. So this is what I have to do in a month. So this is what I have to do every week. And then you can start, and then that's the what, you start to put the how around it. So that's looking at, in your business goals, maybe it's if you're selling, it's a certain number of sales calls, it's signing a certain number of client contracts. I know when I started my business, because this can be really, really overwhelming for people. When I started my business, my only goal was I needed, a certain number of clients, and they all had to pay me at least a certain amount of money. And that, it was like, even if it was like 4 clients at $2,000 a month a piece, that's $8,000. So that doesn't sound so scary. Finding 4 people to say yes out of, hundreds that I know in a big network, that doesn't sound terrifying. Whereas, if I had said I'm going to get to $8,000 by having, 80 people doing whatever, like that just get intimidating when you start to put those numbers to it. So if you're able to break it down into something that feels smart and manageable, it kind of gets you out of that like fight or flight. I know I've been there a lot of times where the to-do list gets really long and you just freak out and want to do nothing. So if you're
throw your hands up.
if you're able to break it down into something that feels really manageable, that you can get up in the morning and know, I've got to call 6 people today. That doesn't sound scary. I have to call 600 people, in the next 30 days. Maybe that sounds a little scary, but if you get up and start with the 6, you're moving the needle. You're moving the needle pretty quickly, but it's incremental, so it doesn't feel as scary.
Sure.
But that's what I think the scorecard does, is it gives you those kind of big rocks. You break it down to maybe the little rocks. And then from there, every month you'll do some planning. Every week you'll do some planning. When you get up in the morning, maybe those first 10 minutes after you go through, whatever a morning routine looks like for you, it's 10 minutes of what am I going to do today? What do I have to get done today? And what is that most important thing that I start with in the morning?
Yeah. See, and I think that that's so key to realize that even when you reach certain levels in your business and you've become, maybe you've hit 6 figures, maybe you're multi 6 figures, maybe you're cresting that 7-figure mark already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're starting at scratch. There's a, lady that commented, she's like, how much money does it start to even start a business? And, right. Like you're just thinking about it, setting those goals so that you have something to start being measured on. And if you have a team, right, that holds you accountable, and I think that for me, that's a huge one. Even though I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a solopreneur, I have a team, right, that doesn't come to and check in my office every day, but I'm accountable to them. They're like my board of directors, and I get to answer to that advisory board with my decisions. And I think that when you start a scorecard method, which I love that you do that. I mean, I think a lot of people do it, but not actually to that level, or maybe it just stays on the vision board, right?
Mhm.
Like it doesn't make it past the vision board.
And
Kind of.
it's not to knock vision boards. Vision boards are
No.
wonderful. They're great
Yeah.
tools, but what a vision board doesn't give you is a next step.
Yes.
Okay, there's a shiny new BMW on the vision board, but like, how do
How
I
do I
go?
get it? Yeah.
There's a
What's it gonna
vacation
take?
there, like how do I shut myself down and take a vacation?
Yeah. Yeah. And those are really what kind of clients do you take? Since you're a project manager, let's like explain that really quick here. What
Yeah.
exactly that does and
So my clients tend to fall in a couple of areas. Either they're agencies that are looking to optimize their processes or just need some help in a short term. So like I just came off an engagement with a client where they needed some project management help so that because the CEO was actually doing all the project management, but he also
mm,
needed to go be the CEO, do some business development, figure out how he wanted to grow and scale. So I worked with them, as feet on the ground for about 6 months so that he could go do that. They've now had to actually hire two full-time project managers because he was able to bring in so much new business that
wow.
they needed to scale up the team with some full-time hires. Also, right now, I'm working with a local media company, helping them with sponsorship sales. So,
Mm,
looking at how do we help them with operational expenses instead of just pop-up ads everywhere on their website
yeah.
or really disruptive, more traditional media type advertising, traditional ad buys. How else can we bring in revenue to support the newsroom without having to do that? And a lot of it really comes through engagement with the community, through corporate support, and being able to produce events. So each event itself almost becomes a project, and we almost go through the scorecarding process there with, okay, we're going to do this thing. How many tickets do we need to sell? How many sponsorship dollars do we need to bring in for this to be, a viable, good use of our time and grow the
Mhm.
newsroom, support the newsroom, engage with our audience, hit all of those goals. So I do a lot of that. I've worked with some podcasts. I've worked with folks who sell industrial products. I've worked with folks who do like design and development work, and they're looking to grow or scale their business. So it's both process
Mhm.
from a internal process, external process. How do you find new customers? And then also, looking at the scopes of services, just from a project management lens. Because I work in all these areas, I do get tons of questions all the time from folks, what's SEO? How do I do it? Do I need to hire a consultant? How much blog content? And actually, I'm like completely fascinated with blogs right now. I've been doing some content
Gosh, I love
development
it.
for work, for
Yeah.
client work. And first of all, it's been the most fun I've ever had. I'm working with a career site and a pet food company, so I get to write about dogs all day.
What?
Yeah, and everyone's so jealous. I'm like, this is so much fun. Can this please never end?
Right?
So definitely loving working with folks in those markets, which is something brand new to me. I've been on the consumer product side, I've been in the managed service side. So
Sure.
now, moving into health and wellness for pets is brand new for me, but super, super fun.
So in your lane though too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
completely in our lane. My dog thinks he's my boss. And he is, but
All dogs
he
are
really
bosses.
thinks
Yeah.
he's the boss. So we're having a great time with that as well.
That's so neat. You guys and Marissa's website's on the screen. If by chance you're watching on any of our podcasts, we'll make sure we drop this in the feed so you can reach out. You can tap into who she is, check her out on her website, see what she does. If by chance you own a corporation and you are in need of some massive outside eyeballs on your processes. And figure out what needs to come into play with making sure that that is in line with your vision and making sure that those strategies are in place. A project manager, much like Marissa with her massive portfolio behind her, can be of extreme value to you in your business. I can't even tell you enough what a project manager of not only your education and your background, but your continuing like You're just not like, oh yeah, I'm the queen. No, you continue. Which I love about you is that you continue to do your own self-development as well, and continue to put classes in your, under your belt, and continue that personal development as well as your
The
professional
Project
development.
Management Institute actually requires that you do 60 continuing ed hours every 3 years, which is one of the things I love most about having the PMP certification, is that, their philosophy is like you're never done learning, which
Yeah.
aligned really well as I was looking at different, educational opportunities and certifications. That was one that I felt really strongly about because I love the continuing ed piece. They also require that every 3 years, 8 of those hours be in leadership development training. So
Love that.
I have not only the opportunity, but also the obligation to go do that every 3 years. And it's one of my favorite things. It's something that I really look forward to.
And I think and I'm just going to go there and point out how not only important it is to have somebody with that kind of education and that kind of drive and commitment to making sure, one, that you're certified, two, that you have the continuing education behind you, three, that it's mandatory from your certification program that you went through. The benefits that come with you in that role of project management kind of are irreplaceable.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna say that, and I'm a huge believer in that. Yes, our experiences go a long ways, but the fact that we go and on purpose study to reinforce the knowledge that we have makes you that much more marketable and that much more beneficial to my company. And I want that to land for people, that bringing somebody on board on purpose to help with the project management of your baby.
Yeah,
Really.
that's what people's businesses are. Like it really, that's a really important point is that, when you bring in a partner, whether it's me or somebody else, you want somebody who's going to take care of your baby the way that you will, and think about it in terms of, how do you grow this? How do you scale this? And how do you continue to make the best decisions? I mean, I have conversations with business partners all the time, especially in sales opportunities, about, does this align with our mission, with our values? And it's not just necessarily about making a buck.
Yeah. And I'm going to close the show with that, because I think that is so important for that to land, and for our people to realize the benefit of somebody with your training and your expertise and your experience when they come into partnership with you. It's beyond beneficial. It's beyond beneficial. So, you guys, we have been talking with the amazing Marissa Taffer today, who owns Marissa Taffer Consulting. You can reach her. She's her website's been on the screen. It will be in every show note possible where we drop our information about her in the show today. Please reach out to her, be in her space, pick up what she's teaching you. And if you do nothing else, go make 6 columns on a piece of paper.
Absolutely.
Go make 6 columns on a piece of paper. If you don't know what that means, rewind this and watch it again. Marissa, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
God, so much fun. Everybody else, wherever you're watching from, one, we so appreciate you. Thank you so much. Again, if you're watching the replay, we appreciate you on our replays as well. Please let us know that that's where you're watching us from. And we will catch you right back here soon. Take care, everybody.